The pain was so great, I wish for death. These words from a 14th century monk capture the horror of untreated toothache. Before dentistry, before anesthesia, how did people endure the unendurable? Their desperate solutions will haunt you. You wake to a throbbing pain in your jaw. It's not your first toothache, but this one feels different. The dull ache from yesterday has sharpened overnight. You press your tongue against the offending molar, wincing at the hot pulse of pain. Across the room, your brother snores in the stale straw. The first light of dawn filters through the shutters, but sleep won't return now. By mid-morning, the pain has settled into a relentless rhythm. You chew your bread carefully, favoring the left side. The crust grinds against your sore tooth, sending a shock through your skull. At the market, you pass a merchant hawking walnuts. Their hard shells remind you of the crunch that started this misery 3 days ago. A passing cleric grimaces in sympathy. His own broken tooth gives him an uneven whistle when he speaks. By evening, the pain has teeth of its own. It gnaws at your jaw when you try to sip ale, throbs when you tilt your head. You press a finger against your swollen cheek, feeling the heat through your skin. Your wife urges you to eat, but the thought of chewing sends fresh waves of nausea through you. The children's laughter at supper makes your head pound harder. When you finally crawl into bed, the pain follows you down into the straw. Archaeologists find medieval skulls with teeth worn down to stumps by coarse bread and grit in flour. Some show cavities deep enough to expose the nerve. You wouldn't know about nerves, of course, only that the pain comes in waves, worse when you're tired or hungry. Winter brings sharp twinges when cold air hits that spot. Summer means flies buzzing around your bad breath, which you try to mask with mint leaves that do little good. Your neighbor recalls the old woman who died screaming from tooth pain last winter. The memory makes your palms sweat. You've seen men crippled by abscesses, their faces swollen like rotten fruit. Some take to drinking themselves, insensible just to dull the ache. The barber surgeon in town claims he can help, but you've heard the screams from his shop. You finger the dried cloves in your pouch, knowing they'll only buy you an hour's relief if you're lucky. The monks at the abbey say pain cleanses the soul. But as the throbbing steals your sleep for the third night, you don't feel holy, just exhausted. Your gums bleed when you poke at them with a twig. The taste of pus coats your tongue. Across Europe, skeletons show people picking at their teeth with whatever came to hand: bones, sticks, even bits of metal. Some try to clean their teeth, others just poked at the pain like you're doing now. A traveling minstrel once joked that toothache was God's way of making sure peasants didn't forget they were alive. You don't laugh when you remember this. Instead, you watch dawn break with gritty eyes, knowing today you'll have to find help. The poultices and prayers haven't worked. The pain has outgrown home remedies. You dress slowly, wondering whether you'll still have a tooth by nightfall. The smell of crushed herbs hits you as you push open the healer's door. Mint, chamomile, something bitter you can't name. She nods at your swollen cheek and reaches for her mortar without a word. You envy her smooth, even teeth, a rarity in someone past 30. Most adults lose at least half their teeth by your age. Your own father chewed with his gums before they buried him. The healer's hands move quickly, grinding something green and pungent. You wonder if this will be the remedy that finally works, or just another disappointment before the knife. The healer presses a warm bundle of cloth against your cheek. Crushed henbane seeds release a bitter scent that makes your nose wrinkle. She murmurs an incantation while packing the poultice against your gums. The leaves feel slippery and slightly numbing at first, but the throbbing returns within minutes. You've been here before. Everyone tries henbane first. Apothecaries stock it by the bushel, though sometimes it makes patients sicker than the toothache itself. Digging through medieval medical texts reveals dozens of these remedies. Boiled earthworms in vinegar. Burnt mouse heads ground into powder. Sage leaves soaked in wine. Some relieve pain briefly by numbing the gums. Others just leave a foul taste in your mouth. A 12th century treatise from Salerno describes pressing a hot iron to the jaw. The heat supposedly distracted from the tooth pain. You wouldn't know if it worked. No one in your village owns such an iron. By midday, the henbane fails completely. The healer tries a paste of crushed pepper and garlic next. It burns so fiercely you cough, eyes watering. For a blessed moment, the new pain drowns out the old. Then the heat fades, leaving your mouth raw and the ache untouched. She offers a tincture of poppy tears and wine, strong enough to make your limbs heavy, but the tooth still pulses underneath the haze. You notice the little linen bag around her neck. Every healer wears one, stuffed with herbs and scraps of scripture. She catches your glance and presses the bag to your swollen cheek. The faint scent of myrrh mixes with sweat-damp linen. This is how most toothache sufferers end their search, not with medicine, but with prayer. Your wife insisted you visit the chapel yesterday. You knelt before Saint Apollonia's statue, the patroness of tooth troubles. Her mouth gaped where tormentors had ripped out her teeth. The priest placed a relic, finger bone, he claimed, against your jaw and chanted Latin words. You left with hopeful dread, knowing the drill. Wait 3 days. If the saint refused to intervene by then, you need earthly solutions. 3 village women swear by threading a dead man's hair through the bad tooth. Old Marta even wears a noose around her neck, stolen from hanged thief. None of them have perfect teeth, but fewer gaps than most. Superstition blurs with remedy everywhere you look. Last winter, Widow Agnes buried one of her rotten molars at a crossroads after sunset. She claims the pain left by morning, though she won't say what she promised in return. The church allows these practices if grudgingly. A bishop's ledger from York mentions blessing toothache amulets, provided they contain scriptures alongside the herbs. Pilgrims flock to shrines where saints' teeth reportedly cured the afflicted. Skeletons near these sites show worse dental health than average. Whatever relief pilgrims found clearly didn't last. Your healer mutters charms as she works, mixing honey with crushed ants. The mixture bubbles slightly when she adds vinegar. Archaeological digs turn up ant remains and dental abscesses, likely from failed attempts at this exact remedy. The Romans swore by it. So did the Arabs. You let her pack it into the cavity, though your stomach turns at the sour-sweet stench. Night falls with no improvement. The poultice drools down your chin, sticky with honey and blood. Your jaw feels hot to the touch. The healer wipes her hands on her apron and sighs. She doesn't say what you both know. Her herbs have failed. The Latin name for henbane, hyoscyamus, means pig bean. Right now, you feel less like a healed patient than livestock waiting for slaughter. From the corner, her apprentice watches with hollow eyes. He lost 3 teeth last winter. You recognize the sunken look of someone who's tasted their own pus. His tongue pokes constantly at the gaps, like yours will soon. When your eyes meet, he fingers the wooden cross at his neck. Not prayer again. You've had enough of hope in small cloth bags. Records show some medieval people resorted to magic when prayers failed. A 14th century English scroll instructs sufferers to write +B + L + E + F+ on their jaw during a waning moon. Another recommends holding a frog against the cheek until the poor creature dies, taking the pain with it. Tonight, you consider it. Anything beats this unending pulse behind your molars. Moonlight seeps through the shutters as you walk home. The cold air helps, though it won't last. You pass the blacksmith's darkened shop. Last summer, you saw him pull his own tooth with hot tongs. He passed out from the pain, but the tooth came free. Now he drinks through the gap where it never grew back. Near the well, young Tomas practices swinging a linen thread. Old wives say you can yank a tooth clean out with the right knot and a sudden jerk. The boy's missing a lower incisor already. His brother holds a candle, watching you with the eager dread of children who've heard too many screams. You shake your head and keep walking. Whatever happens next, it won't be a child's game with laundry cord. Inside your house, your wife sleeps clutching St. Bridget's cross. You think of the bone fragment pressed to your jaw yesterday, the silent saint, the useless herbs, the jars of crushed insects and prayers whispered to indifferent shadows. As you blow out the candle, your tongue finds the rotten tooth. It feels loose, whether from the poultices or the decay, you can't tell. Tomorrow you'll visit the barber surgeon. His tools gleam. The healer runs her finger along your swollen gum, then nods knowingly. The worm is deep, she says. You freeze. Not an abscess, not a rotten tooth. A living creature gnawing inside your jaw. Her breath smells of garlic as she leans closer. See how the pain moves? That's the worm turning. This idea didn't start with her. The Babylonians wrote about tooth worms on clay tablets 5,000 years ago. The Greeks believed them to be the cause of all tooth decay. By your time, every village healer knows the signs. Throbbing that comes and goes, sharp stabs when eating sweets, clear evidence of the worm's hunger. You've heard stories of healers drawing out wriggling creatures from patients' mouths. No one you know has actually seen it happen, but everyone knows someone who swears it's true. The healer prepares a smoke treatment. She lights a mix of beeswax and henbane on a spoon, directing the fumes toward your tooth. The worm cannot bear the smoke, she explains. It will flee or die. The thick vapors make your eyes water. You imagine some pale, grub-like thing writhing in your tooth's hollow. When the treatment ends, your mouth tastes like burnt hair, but the ache remains. Texts from this era describe worms as thin as hairs that bored through teeth. Some manuscripts show illustrations, sinuous creatures curled inside molars. The descriptions vary by region. Italian sufferers imagined fat white maggots, while English accounts spoke of thread-like parasites. All versions shared one trait. They were never actually seen. A traveling surgeon once claimed to have extracted a tooth worm from a noblewoman. He carried the specimen in a vial, a translucent strand coiled in vinegar. Later, a physician identified it as a nerve from a pig's tooth. Such deceptions were common. Real patients paid good money to see proof of their tormentor. Your healer tries a different approach now, a poultice of crushed leeches and salt. Leeches kill worms, she says, packing the sticky mass around your tooth. Archaeological finds show this remedy persisted for centuries. Excavated skulls sometimes contain leech remains lodged in dental cavities. The treatment likely did more harm than good. Salt irritated exposed nerves, while decaying leech flesh introduced new infections. At dusk, she suggests the candle method. You tilt your head back over a bowl of water while she holds a burning taper near your tooth. The worm seeks light, she murmurs. It will leap toward the flame and drown. You stare at the wavering light until your eyes cross. The bowl remains empty. Later, you'll learn this practice dated back to Roman times. Pliny the Elder described it in his Natural History, though he admitted he'd never witnessed it work. The worm theory persisted because it explained what people experienced. Tooth decay often starts with intermittent pain, easy to imagine as a creature waking and sleeping. Visible cavities look like wormholes. When a tooth cracked unexpectedly, surely something inside had moved. And unlike complex medical theories, anyone could understand a hungry worm. You wake the next morning to find your cheek purple where the leech poultice burned the skin. The tooth still aches. The healer looks tired. She recommends honey mixed with spider eggs, a Saxon remedy. You decline. As you walk home, children playing by the stream shriek about pulling a worm from the mud. Their laughter follows you. Monastery libraries preserved more rational explanations. An 11th century Persian physician correctly identified acid from food as the cause of tooth decay. His writings never reached your village. Even if they had, what good were invisible acids compared to the vivid idea of a squirming parasite? Your neighbor swears by the onion cure. She insists sleeping with a roasted onion in your ear draws out tooth worms overnight. You try it twice. The first night brings no change. The second leaves your ear inflamed from onion juices. Your tooth pulses on, indifferent. The wealthier you were, the worse the treatments became. Court physicians prescribed mercury mixtures to poison the worm, along with the patient. One German nobleman inhaled powdered wolf bone through his nose to force the worm out his mouth. His skeleton, unearthed in 1927, showed all teeth lost by age 30. By week's end, you're ready for desperate measures. The blacksmith's wife whispers about a wise woman south of the river. She supposedly removed worms using goose fat and a silver needle. You find her hut empty, the door ajar. Inside, jars line the shelves. One holds what looks like a pickled centipede floating in murky liquid. You back away slowly. Modern dentistry would later prove worms had nothing to do with tooth decay. The real culprits, bacteria and sugar, were invisible to medieval eyes. Yet the myth endured well into the 1700s. Museum collections still contain ornate ivory carvings of teeth split open to reveal carved worms inside. Teaching aids for dental undergraduates. Your final stop is the apothecary's shop. He sells a paste guaranteed to expel worms through the soles of the feet. The ingredients include crushed pearls and vinegar. You buy a pot anyway. That night, you rub it on your feet before bed. The sharp smell keeps you awake. Just before dawn, you dream of something crawling up your throat. You wake gagging, but it's just the paste aftertaste. The worm theory's legacy lingers in odd places. Some languages still use phrases linking toothaches to worms. Rural healers in parts of Eastern Europe continued the smoke treatments into the 20th century. Modern dentists occasionally meet elderly patients who ask if their pain comes from the worm. You spit blood into the gutter outside the barber surgeon's shop. The worm isn't real, but this pain is. Through the open door, you see the tools laid out on a clean cloth. Pliers, a hooked probe, a knife. Tomorrow you'll sit in that chair. Tonight, you drink until the throbbing fades to a distant echo. The wine tastes metallic against your bleeding gums. A boy runs past, waving a stick at imaginary foes. One day his teeth will fail him too. Maybe he'll blame a worm, or a curse, or the alignment of stars. The causes matter less than the result. Another person gripping a tavern bench, waiting for the barber's knife. The worm myth solved nothing, but gave frightened people a monster they could name. Tomorrow you'll face a different horror, cold steel and the crunch of bone. No stories will ease that pain. The barber surgeon's shop smells of blood and burned hair. Wood shavings litter the floor where he's shaped the chair you now sit in, its arms worn smooth by white-knuckled hands. He hums while arranging his tools on a stained cloth. Pliers, a hooked probe, something that looks like a miniature crowbar. You focus on a bottle of wine by his feet, not for cleaning wounds, for you to drink until your vision blurs. Barber surgeons learned their trade through apprenticeship, not books. Some trained under butchers first. Their tools often doubled as shaving instruments. The razor he used to scrape a merchant's cheeks yesterday now waits to cut your gums. You grip the chair as he tests the pliers' grip on a piece of wood. The crack echoes in the small room. Medieval extractions followed no standard procedure. Some barber surgeons used a pelican, a claw-like device that levered teeth out. Others preferred dental screws twisted into the tooth until it popped free. Many just used brute force with pliers. Skeletons from the period show teeth fractured mid-extraction, roots left to fester in the jaw. He offers wine first. You drain 3 cups quickly. The alcohol warms your stomach, but does nothing for the fear. A boy holds your shoulders from behind. His job is to keep you still. The barber surgeon's breath hits your face as he peers into your mouth. Garlic and stale beer. His finger prods the rotten molar. You jerk away instinctively. He sighs and reaches for a leather strap to tie your head to the chair. Records from London guilds list tooth extractions as the 3rd most common surgical procedure, after bloodletting and wound treatment. No training was required beyond basic apprenticeships. Some barber surgeons honed their skills on corpses, but most practiced on living, screaming patients like you. The pliers close around your tooth. The first tug sends fire through your jaw. The boy grips your shoulders harder. The barber surgeon braces his foot against your chest for leverage, a common technique depicted in medical illustrations. Your scream comes out muffled around the metal in your mouth. He pauses to spit on his hands for better grip. Pain isn't the only danger. Barber surgeons sometimes cracked adjacent teeth during extractions. Archaeological finds show jaws with multiple damaged teeth clustered together, evidence of botched procedures. Others reveal fractured mandibles from excessive force. After the 4th pull, something gives way. The pain explodes, then dulls to a deep ache. He proudly displays your tooth, a blackened stump with dangling flesh. The room tilts. Blood fills your mouth faster than you can spit into the bucket. The boy hands you a rag soaked in vinegar to bite down on. Post-extraction infections killed more patients than the procedure itself. Without sterilization, bacteria entered open sockets easily. Some barber surgeons packed wounds with moss or bread, ancient versions of gauze that often introduced more dirt. Account books from monasteries show monks consumed extra wine for weeks after extractions, likely to manage infection pain. You wake on the floor. The boy dribbles water onto your face. The barber surgeon counts coins from your purse nearby. Your jaw feels both numb and raw, like someone struck you with a hammer. He warns against probing the wound with your tongue, but you do it anyway. The gap feels vast and jagged. Vinegar stings the fresh hole. Medieval people understood extraction risks vaguely. Some believed sucking the wound clear prevented fever, a practice that introduced more bacteria. Others thought swallowing the blood caused insanity, hence the buckets at every barber surgeon's chair. Few connected the red streaks creeping up their necks days later with the dirty pliers that had touched their gums. Walking home is a blur. The left side of your face swells visibly by sunset. Your wife gasps when she sees you. She boils cloths to press against your jaw, but the heat worsens the throbbing. That night, you dream of the barber surgeon chasing you with pliers made from chicken bones. Recovery took weeks for survivors. Guild records mention barber surgeons paying damages when extractions went wrong, but only if the victim lived long enough to complain. One Your case describes a man developing the swelling disease after an extraction and dying within days. The barber only had to forfeit 6 pence to the guild. By morning, your fever burns. The swelling now reaches your eye socket. Your wife sends for the healer, who takes one look and prepares a poultice of moldy bread. She whispers prayers while applying it. You catch the word gangrene. Without antibiotics, infections spread unchecked. Excavated skeletons show abscesses that eroded jawbones entirely, some with fistulas where pus drained through the skin. A few show attempts at draining abscesses with hot needles, likely excruciating procedures that bought little time. The healer returns at dusk with elderflower tea. You sip it weakly, struggling around the swelling. She doesn't mention payment, a bad sign. When she leaves, your wife begins sewing a linen wrap for your jaw. The needle flashes in the firelight. You know what she isn't saying. If the swelling reaches your throat, you'll suffocate. Some victims survived through sheer luck. A Bristol merchant's diary describes enduring 3 extraction infections over his lifetime, losing part of his jawbone, but living to age 50. Others weren't so fortunate. Church records list countless burials attributed to tooth grief or jaw fever. On the 3rd day, the fever breaks. Your wife weeps with relief when you swallow broth without vomiting. The swelling recedes slowly, leaving yellow bruises across your cheekbone. The empty socket never truly heals. Months later, you'll still probe it with your tongue when anxious. The barber surgeon nods approvingly when you pass his shop weeks after. He points to your sunken cheek as proof of his skill. You nod politely but cross the street to avoid him thereafter. The wealthy had other options, gilded dentures, spices to mask decay. You have one less tooth and a newfound terror of sweets. Archaeologists can spot extraction survivors centuries later. Healed jawbones show smoothed edges where bone regrew over sockets. Others tell darker stories. Necrosis markers where infection ate through mandibles. The poorest graves contain the most dental trauma, suggesting extractions were often delayed until death neared. Your neighbor asks about the barber surgeon's skill. You mumble something noncommittal. That night, you dream of pliers glinting in torchlight. When your youngest complains of a loose tooth, you let it dangle for weeks rather than visit the shop. Let fall out naturally, even if he eats gruel until it does. The tooth's absence changes your bite. You chew unevenly now, favoring the right side. Bread crusts and tough meat become enemies. Your wife soaks everything in broth until soggy. The children find it funny when you slosh porridge accidentally. You laugh too, though it makes your scar tissue pull. Barber surgeons weren't villains, just people working with medieval understanding. Their ledgers show genuine attempts to relieve suffering. Discounted rates for the poor, bartered services for those who couldn't pay. Many develop tricks to minimize pain, like quick twists instead of steady pulls. The famed surgeon guide at Toothache even designed specialized forceps in the 14th century, though few barber surgeons could afford such tools. Winter comes early this year. The cold air stings your healed gums like a reminder. At church, you notice how many parishioners cover their mouths when speaking, not for modesty, but missing teeth. The baker whistles through his 3 remaining molars. The priest lisps around absent incisors. You're no longer exceptional, just another peasant with a hole in your smile. Years later, you'll watch your son enter the same barber surgeon's shop. You won't stop him. There's no alternative. But this time you bring extra wine. And when his screams start, you drink until they sound distant, like echoes from someone else's past. The crust of yesterday's bread takes a dozen chews before you can swallow. Your gums burn where they rub against the rough surface. At the market, Old Tom offers you an apple. You decline with a wave. The last one lodged painfully in your empty molar sockets until you pried it out with dirty fingers. Spring peas that others pop fresh from the pod must be mashed between your fingers first. Summer berries stain your chin when they slip through gaps your tongue can't contain. Being toothless reshapes your diet completely. Archaeologists analyzing medieval skeletons find those with missing teeth show bone loss from malnutrition, especially vitamin C deficiency. Without molars to grind fibrous vegetables or chew meat, many relied on porridge and stewed fruits. Some resorted to soaking bread in ale until it dissolved in a swallowable paste. Even then, undigested food fragments appear in fossilized feces from the period, suggesting poor nutrient absorption. Your wife boils everything now. Meat simmers for hours until it tears apart with a spoon. Eggs become thin gruel mixed with milk. The children tease you for eating like a baby, until you snap at them with a spray of half-chewed turnip. Their laughter dies when they see your face, not angry, just exhausted. Breadcrumbs catch in the ridges of your healed gum line, irritating the thin flesh. You learn to rinse your mouth after every meal, spitting brown water into the yard where chickens peck at it curiously. Socially, gaps mark you as aging or impoverished. Wealthy merchants blacken healthy teeth with soot to appear fashionably decayed, a sign they can afford sugar. But actual toothlessness carries no such prestige. At church, you notice how the priest flinches when you recite prayers too close. Your breath carries the sour milk stench of chronic gum disease. The baker's daughter, once sweet on you, now serves your loaf last when others won't witness her wrinkled nose. Dentures existed, but not for peasants. The rich wore carved ivory teeth wired together with gold thread. Some used teeth stolen from corpses. A soldier's pay might include scavenged molars after battles. You've heard whispers of a mercenary who kept his dead captain's teeth in a pouch, waiting until his own fell out to string them with catgut. These contraptions rarely fit properly. Excavated examples show bite marks where wearers struggled to keep them from clacking during meals. You carve your own solution, a stick of soft willow whittled into rough pegs that fit your gum ridges. It helps grind boiled carrots into pulp when you bite down. Within weeks, the wood darkens with saliva and food particles. Your wife insists you boil it nightly, but the sour taste never fully clears. Medical texts from the period describe similar devices, warning against splinters causing tongue abscesses. One monk's chronicle mentions a man choking to death when his wooden denture dislodged during supper. Autumn turns your remaining teeth loose. Cold air makes the exposed nerves sing. You request the soupiest stews at taverns now, spooning them carefully past swollen gums. The blacksmith nods knowingly. He's down to 4 working molars himself. His solution is roasted acorn mash, pressed into the spaces where teeth used to be. It provides cushioning during meals, though bits stick stubbornly beneath your tongue. The consequences extend beyond hunger. Without proper chewing, digestion falters. Your stomach cramps after even light meals. The apothecary sells chalk tablets to settle the humors, but they only constipate you further. Records from monastery infirmaries show toothless patients suffering chronic bowel obstructions, undigested chunks lodging in their intestines. Some died from perforations caused by sharp food fragments their bodies couldn't process. Winter brings the worst of it. Hard frosts turn every breath into knives against bare nerves. You wrap your lower face in woolen scraps, which grow damp with constant saliva seepage. Children point when you pass. Between the cloth and hunch posture, you look decades older than your years. The church almsman eyes you twice before recognizing the farmer who donated lentils last harvest. He offers you the beggar's portion without asking. Some attempted tooth transplants. Barber surgeons advertised live tooth grafting, often using teeth ripped from servants or the poor. These invariably failed due to infection and rejection, though not before wealthy patients paid handsomely for the torture. You once saw a noblewoman's mouth stuffed with a dead stableboy's incisors, all blackened and loose within a month. Now she drinks wine through a reed to avoid disturbing them further. Spring finds you thinner than ever. Your belt cinches 2 notches tighter. Vegetables pass through you whole, their nutrients untouched. Meat is a distant memory. Even tender cuts resist your gumming efforts. The tavern keeper slides you an extra tankard of ale most nights, knowing you'll fill up on liquid calories. Charity or guilt, you can't tell which. Others aren't so lucky. Parish burial records list cause of death as starvation following tooth loss, with disturbing frequency for those past 40. Marriage prospects suffer too. Your sister postpones her dowry negotiations when the suitor notices your sunken jawline across the negotiating table. No one wants to bind their bloodline to someone who can't properly nourish heirs. Even livestock deals go poorly. Merchants assume toothlessness signals broader infirmity, offering half price for your sheep at market. You spit in the dirt rather than argue. The wealthy commission grotesque dentures from animal teeth, boar tusks carved into molars, walrus ivory shaped into convincing incisors. Some even wore full sets made from executed criminals' teeth, though these often carry disease. You saw a traveling minstrel once with a complete upper rack of mismatched human teeth wired together. When he sang, they clicked like dice in a cup. By midsummer, your speech slurs. Missing front teeth alter your diction. Words that require tongue-to-tooth contact come out muddy. The priest asks you to repeat scripture readings 3 times during Mass before giving up. Children mock your lisp behind your back. At the harvest celebration, you keep to the edges, sipping cider through a straw to avoid spillage. The miller's wife, 5 teeth missing herself, nods in silent camaraderie across the fire. Medieval art depicts toothlessness as punishment for sin. Gaping mouths in frescoes of hell, damned souls unable to eat the banquet before them. Living the reality feels less divine retribution than slow suffocation. You dream of biting into crisp apples, only to wake with aching gums and another day of gruel. Your willow peg breaks during supper. A sharp fragment jabs your palate, drawing blood. Your wife sighs and fetches the whittling knife again. The new one sits unevenly, rubbing a sore on your inner cheek that never fully heals. Ironically, some toothless individuals outlive their peers by avoiding dental infections. Skeletal remains show cases where complete tooth loss actually prevented deadly abscesses, nature's crude solution where medieval medicine failed. These survivors still bore the marks of malnutrition, their bones thinner and more porous than those with intact dentition. Social isolation grows with each lost tooth. Conversations dwindle as enunciation falters. You eat alone more often, avoiding the shame of dribbling broth down your tunic. The blacksmith tries to include you in dice games, but your whistling speech makes keeping score difficult. Eventually, you stop attending gatherings altogether. The wealthy had one last resort: gemstone dentures. Rubies carved into canines, sapphire premolars set in gold. More status symbol than functional aid, these ornaments destroyed what remained of gums with their rough surfaces. Museum specimens show intricate settings designed purely for display, wearers removing them before meals to preserve the jewels from damage. You turn down invitations to your niece's wedding. Traveling would mean days of soft foods and careful water sips. Better they remember you as the uncle who sent a fattened goose than the hollow-cheeked specter fumbling with stew at the feast. Legally, toothlessness could invalidate testimony. Court records note witnesses dismissed because speech impediment for missing teeth made them unintelligible. Some land disputes hinged on whether a toothless elder could properly recite boundary markers from memory. You sign documents with an X now, though you once wrote a fair hand. The final humiliation comes at winter solstice. The village chooses straw men to represent the old year, traditionally the friendliest residents. They press the honor upon you with solemn smiles. Your straw double burns brightly in the square, while children chant rhymes about time, consuming all. You watch flames lick at the figure's carefully stitched gap-toothed mouth, then turn home early. Monasteries developed special diets for toothless monks involving sieved soups and fermented milk. But these required resources peasants couldn't spare. Your meals grow simpler as seasons pass. Barley boiled to mush, fermented oats thinned with water. The days of cracking nuts or chewing smoked pork fade like an old man's unreliable memories. Some turn to extreme measures. Excavated graves reveal individuals with animal teeth crudely nailed into their jawbones, likely attempted implants that caused fatal infections. Others show evidence of seashell fragments wedged into sockets as primitive anchors for false teeth. None appear to have worked for long. The last tooth goes quietly, a lower canine loosened by years of uneven chewing. You wake to find it nestled in your palm like a lost button. No blood, no pain, just another gap where something useful once lived. You toss it into the hearth without ceremony. The children will expect coins for such finds, but you haven't smiled widely enough for them to notice its absence yet. Records suggest some medieval people intentionally removed remaining teeth once enough were lost, preferring complete toothlessness to the torment of isolated aching molars. You consider visiting the barber surgeon for this final step, but the memory of pliers keeps you away. Years later, your grandson brings home a deer skull from the woods. He points to the perfect rows of molars, asking why yours don't look like that. You tell him animals don't drink ale or eat sugar comfits. He frowns, pressing a finger against his own small white teeth as if checking their solidity. When he runs off to play, you slip the deer jawbone into your pouch. The smooth enamel ridges feel alien against your calloused fingertips, a reminder of chewing you'll never do again. Archaeologists centuries later will find skeletons like yours across Europe, flattened tooth sockets, reshaped jawbones, evidence of slow starvation. They'll note how peasant graves show more advanced bone loss than noble ones. Some will argue about causes, diet, genetics, access to care. None will recreate the particular agony of watching others bite into ripe pears while you suck weakly at mashed parsnips. The legacy persists in unexpected places. Modern denture adhesive traces its origins to medieval attempts using beeswax and tree resin. Dental implants owe their existence to Renaissance-era experiments with gold wire sutures. Even toothpaste evolved from the abrasive mixes you once rubbed on your gums with a cloth, though yours contained crushed oyster shells instead of modern fluoride. Your wife soaks blackberries in honey for your supper. The seed sticks stubbornly in gum crevices no toothbrush reaches. Outside, the miller's son laughs around a mouthful of fresh bread, his strong teeth flashing in the sunset. You turn away and reach for the willow peg, its surface worn smooth as an old man's memories. You run your tongue along the jagged ridge where your molar used to be. The scar on your jaw pulses faintly before rainstorms. Your grandson watches curiously as you grind herbs with a stone, not for medicine, but because chewing them fresh would take too long. These habits linger like old debts. Medieval toothaches shaped more than individual lives. They redirected history. Wars were fought by soldiers who couldn't properly nourish themselves. Kings made poor decisions under the influence of untreated abscesses. The Anglo-Saxon king Edward the Confessor allegedly postponed coronation plans due to tooth pain. His doctors bled him until he fainted mistaking dental agony for humoral imbalance. We see the legacy in dentistry's slow evolution. Early 18th century tooth keys, an improvement over medieval pliers, still shattered jaws. The first foot-powered dental drill appeared in 1790, but anesthesia took another 50 years. Museums display these tools alongside the skulls they failed to save. Note the progression, from barber surgeons' filthy aprons to Lister's sterilized instruments. Each advancement paid for with medieval suffering. Modern parallels exist where dental care remains scarce. Archaeological studies comparing medieval teeth to modern methamphetamine users show similar erosion patterns. Both groups grind their teeth uncontrollably. Medieval peasants for malnutrition, addicts for drug effects. Some developing nations still use medieval extraction methods when drills and fillings aren't available. The tools may be cleaner now, but the screams sound the same. Research confirms what medieval people intuited. Dental infections increase risks of heart disease by 72%, a fact hidden in plaque samples from ancient arteries. Archaeologists tracing the Black Death's spread found higher mortality rates in communities with widespread dental abscesses. Rotten teeth didn't just hurt, they compromised entire immune systems. Your uneven bite affects more than eating. The jaw misalignment causes headaches that remind you of those feverish nights after the extraction. Contemporary orthodontists call this temporomandibular joint disorder. Medieval sufferers called it demonic possession, treating it with prayers to Saint Apollonia while their jawbones eroded. The wealthy weren't spared. Louis XIV surgeons performed 14 tooth extractions in one sitting, without anesthesia. His courtiers developed elaborate etiquette for hiding missing teeth during audiences. The Sun King's dentures, made of ivory and gold, required servants to pre-soften his food, a luxury you never had. Museums display similar devices with bite marks from desperate chewing. Modern implants trace their origins to medieval experimentation. Swedish archaeologist Ingvar Jungner discovered Viking-era skulls with seashell fragments fused to jawbones, primitive attempts at implantation. Today's titanium posts follow the same principle, minus the fatal infections. Even fluoride treatments echo medieval practices of chewing arsenic-laced twigs to deaden pain, a remedy that sometimes poisoned the patient instead. Dental hygiene's cultural evolution tells its own story. Medieval nuns recommended rubbing teeth with holy relics, a practice that ironically spread decay through shared bacterial contact. The first bristled toothbrush didn't appear until 1498 in China. Europe wouldn't adopt them widely for another 3 centuries. Plenty of time for your ancestors' teeth to rot untouched. The poorest still suffer medieval-level care. British coroners recorded 135 hospital deaths from dental infections between 2010 to 2020. Preventable abscess complications eerily similar to your near-fatal experience. American emergency rooms report patients attempting DIY extractions with pliers when they can't afford dentists. The tools may be stainless steel now, but the desperation remains unchanged. Your daughter-in-law scolds your grandson for avoiding brushing. You watch silently, remembering how your own father's breath could wilt flowers. The boy complains until she shows him pictures of medieval skulls, blackened stumps where teeth should be. He brushes vigorously that night. Some lessons require historical perspective to stick. Medieval medical texts reveal startling insights. The 12th century Trotula mentions tooth decay originating from corrupt juices, a vague but accurate suspicion of oral bacteria. Doctors wouldn't prove the link between sugar and cavities until the 1800s, but medieval healers noticed nobles suffered worse dental health than peasants who couldn't afford sweets. Their prescribed remedies were often deadly, but their observations proved eerily prescient. Modern dentistry's standardization came from warfare. Napoleonic army surgeons developed field extraction techniques that reduced fatalities from dental infections. World War I pilots' smashed jaws led to acrylic denture advancements. The NHS prioritized dental care after finding British recruits had worse teeth than German POWs. Each leap forward required mass suffering first, just on a larger scale than your single ruined molar. The economic impact lingers. Historians estimate medieval workers lost 15% productivity from chronic dental pain, roughly equivalent to modern back injury rates. Today, American businesses lose $45 billion annually to dental-related absences. The suffering hasn't disappeared, just changed forms. Even childcare shows medieval echoes. Your grandson's milk teeth emerge crooked, an issue medieval parents solved by having bigger children knock them out early. Today's orthodontists use spacers and braces instead, but the goal remains the same. Avoid the sunken jaw you now hide behind your hand when laughing. Archaeologists discern social status from dental remains. Noble skeletons show careful extractions with smoothed socket edges, signs of expensive barber-surgeon care. Peasant graves reveal snapped roots left to fester. Your own missing tooth socket would tell future researchers you survived the procedure, but just barely. Religious practices adapted to dental reality. Medieval priests shortened Latin masses when congregations couldn't enunciate responses clearly. Some churches kept bowls for toothless parishioners to spit blood into during services. Today's churches accommodate dental issues differently. Soft communion wafers replace tough bread for elderly members who still struggle with the indignities you knew too well. Dental anesthesia's development owes much to medieval suffering. Early experiments with opiates and alcohol sought to replicate the numbness your henbane poultice briefly provided, only consistently and safely. Modern lidocaine works on the same nerve-blocking principle medieval sufferers craved during extractions, without the risk of poisoning. The artifacts tell sobering stories. A 15th-century ivory carving shows Christ displaying his teeth, a rarity meant to underscore his divine perfection compared to gap-toothed humanity. Museum cases display gold toothpicks that wealthy merchants wore as necklaces, both status symbols and necessary tools for dislodging rotting meat from decaying molars. Your wife's death certificate listed old age, but you know the truth. Years of gum disease and malnutrition weakened her before pneumonia took her. The doctor mentions this casually. Modern medicine now recognizes oral bacteria's role in respiratory infections. Another medieval suspicion confirmed too late for those who suffered through the guessing. Odd survivals persist in language. German idioms still call toothaches worm pain. French preserves mal de dents despite scientific awareness of bacterial causes. English retains long in the tooth from when receding gums visibly aged medieval horses and humans. These phrases fossilize ancient fears in everyday speech. Modern dentists unwittingly recreate medieval experiences. The whine of drills triggers primal panic. Your body remembers when that sound meant coming agony. Numbing injections mimic the medieval practice of rubbing cocaine-laced saliva on gums. Even the clinical smell of antiseptics echoes the vinegar-soaked cloths you bit down on after extractions, just infinitely more effective. Financial barriers strangely parallel medieval constraints. Where your era lacked knowledge, ours often lacks access. Over 130 million Americans skip dental care annually due to cost, effectively living with medieval-level treatment through neglect. Insurance companies approving only extractions over root canals echo ancient solutions that left people like you gumming food prematurely. Equipment museums display the brutal progression. One wall shows Roman dental forceps beside 18th-century pelican extractors, tools that maimed as often as they helped. Another case displays the first mechanical drill from 1871, a terrifying hand-crank device that inspired as much dread as the barber-surgeon's pliers once did. The final exhibit shows modern laser cavities detection, a painless beam that would seem like witchcraft to your younger self writhing on straw. Your remaining teeth loosen with each passing year. The dentist offers implants at a cost exceeding your first home's down payment. You decline politely. The willow peg still works well enough. When your grandson marvels at your resilience, you don't mention the nights spent pressing a hot water bottle to your jaw an improvement over medieval poultices, yet still inadequate. Medieval London's tooth drawer triumphant broadsheets advertised painless extractions. All lies. Today's dental commercials promising perfect smiles gloss over similar realities. The gap between marketing and lived experience hasn't narrowed as much as we pretend. Those with bad teeth still hide their mouths in photos, just as their ancestors did in portraits. Final irony emerges in dental tourism. Wealthy Westerners now travel to Hungary or Mexico for affordable care, reversing medieval pilgrimages where the poor traveled to shrines hoping saints would heal rotting teeth. The destinations changed, but the desperation driving the journeys remains familiar. Archaeological sites sometimes yield tooth charms, molars strung as talismans against future pain. You kept your own extracted tooth for years before losing it, not as a charm, but as a reminder. Modern dentists display plastic models instead, but the underlying message persists. This could be you without proper care. Your grandson brings home a dental hygiene chart from school. It recommends brushing twice daily, a routine as alien to your childhood as smartphones. When he demonstrates proper technique, you notice his pink toothpaste matches the shade of medieval mouthwashes made from rosewater and vinegar. Some solutions persist because they simply work. Retirement homes grapple with medieval-scale dental neglect. Elderly residents with dementia revert to old fears, resisting caregivers' attempts at oral hygiene. Nurses report patients hiding food in cheeks, where missing teeth creates storage pockets, just as your father did when starving winters forced hoarding. Progress hasn't eliminated the problem, only postponed it for most. The next time you sit in a dental chair, notice the ergonomic design cradling your head, a stark contrast to the barber surgeon's wooden bench. The overhead light shines brighter than 100 candles, yet instinct still makes you flinch when instruments click on trays. Centuries of suffering built this momentary discomfort. Your ancestors would envy even this mild unease. The medieval world lived in constant dread of toothaches, a pain we can prevent with simple cleanings today. Their suffering built the dentistry we take for granted. Every fluoride treatment and painless filling stands on centuries of trial and fatal error. Next time you dread a dentist visit, remember the barber surgeon's pliers, the nun praying over bloody rags, the peasant gumming stale bread because extractions came too late. Modern dentistry isn't just convenience. It's the difference between agony and relief, between starvation and sustenance. Our ancestors endured worse horrors than bad teeth. Shall we explore what else they suffered through next?